Member from Parkdale High Park.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and it is an honour and a privilege to rise on behalf of our leader, Andrea Horwath, and also on behalf of the New Democratic Party. You know, Mr. Speaker, I remember it like it was yesterday, the day that violence came into our church. I was a minister at the time and was there on a Saturday afternoon when this woman came running through the door. She came running through the door asking for a safe place, so I put her in my office and closed the door. And then she was followed by her husband. And I want to say, Mr. Speaker, these were not marginalized folk. These were well-respected, well-heeled, well-educated members of our congregation. He went around the church looking for her, banging on doors, opening doors, interrupting yoga classes, children's classes, language classes. And I can safely say in this place, Mr. Speaker, that in that place, I was absolutely terrified. And what I immediately thought of was, if this is how terrified I am in this moment, imagine what this woman lives with every day of her life. There wasn't enough time to call the police, wasn't enough time to do anything much, except ultimately pray for her and her family. The question always is about violence, domestic violence in particular, is why do women stay? And the answer inevitably is sadly the same, because they can't afford to leave. She was no exception. And I think of, as the member spoke from Kitchener-Waterloo, of the Ontario Association of Interval Housing's report, violence is on the increase, and the stay in shelters is lengthening for women. It's not shorter, it's longer, because there is no housing for women to go to that they can afford. Many women find themselves economically trapped with their abusers, with their children. Certainly, the long-awaited housing strategy has not provided an answer. Not one new unit of housing to be built, not one new rental supplement to be paid, not one new dollar to be spent. And Carol Gore, one of my constituents, who says in her article in the Toronto Star, a flurry of announcements but little content that this government's brought forward when dealing with poverty, and we know that poverty, women's poverty, children's poverty, is the root of women's lack of independence and lack of ability to escape violence. I've asked, and we in the New Democratic Party have asked for something very simple, something that exists in many workplaces, many governments around the world, and that is a women's committee, an all-party, all-women's committee, simply to meet, simply to look at the issue of violence and how we can work together to confront it. We have an excellent example of the all-party committee that came together over mental health and addictions. This would be an obvious first step, and one that's been called for. But, Mr. Speaker, I want to end on a happy, upbeat note, because where governments fail to tread, women tread anyway. And there are 3 members of this House that have come together. I was privileged to be one of them. Member from Etobicoke Centre, the member from Whitby, Oshawa, came together, and together with faith leaders across the province of Ontario, we launched what's called Ruth's Daughters of Canada. And what Ruth's Daughters of Canada is asking their congregations to do, and there were Roman Catholics, there were Tibetan Buddhists, there were members of the Salvation Army, leaders of the United Church, leaders of the Muslim Canadian Congress, all faiths came together in this place last May 6th on Mother's Day to launch this initiative. And what they're calling for is chapters to be set up in all congregations of women who get together, who pray together, who share together, and who do something together about domestic violence. Because how often do we women get together about just about everything else in places of worship, except this issue that is our issue, this war against women? And it is a war against women. 1 in 4 women will experience abuse or violence in her lifetime. That, Mr. Speaker, is millions of women. Millions of women in this province. So I wanted to end on an upbeat note, on something that we women are doing. We're doing to confront this. But again, as in past years, I plead with my friends across the aisle to take a step, even a small one, towards a long-term answer that only governments can do. Our daughters and our granddaughters are counting on it. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Ask all members, staff and guests to please rise as we observe a moment of silence in memory of the 14 young women murdered in December of 1989.